What if the most famous story in human history actually had a missing chapter? A chapter so surprising it could change the way we think about both history and spirituality. Imagine this: Jesus, the central figure of Christianity, not just staying in his homeland, but traveling far across Asia, learning from Buddhist monks, exploring the wisdom of India, soaking up teachings from ancient spiritual masters. Sounds like the plot of a novel, right? But what if there's more to it than that? Stick around, because today we're going deep into the mystery of Jesus' so-called lost years, a theory that suggests he may have crossed paths with ancient Buddhist teachings. I'm Matt from Buddhist Wisdom, and after our last video, Was Jesus a Bodhisattva?, lit up the comment section. You asked for more on this topic, so that's exactly what we're diving into today. Here's the thing. What we're talking about today is theory. It's not accepted historical fact. Some of the sources we'll mention are controversial, and plenty of scholars are skeptical. So as always, think critically. Do your own research. The point here isn't to tell you what to believe. It's to explore a topic that gained a lot of attention online and maybe open some new perspectives along the way. Chapter 1. The Missing Years of Jesus. Let's set the stage. We're talking about Jesus of Nazareth, one of the most influential figures in human history. The Gospels give us a clear picture of his birth, his childhood in Bethlehem and Nazareth, and even that story of 12-year-old Jesus debating with scholars in the temple. Luke chapter 2 verses 46 and 47 tell us, "After 3 days they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers." But then, radio silence. The story hits pause. The Gospels skip ahead, and suddenly we're looking at Jesus at age 30, coming to be baptized by John, gathering disciples and beginning his ministry. What happened in between? That's nearly 2 decades of missing time, some of the most formative years of a person's life. If you think about it, that's when most of us figure out who we are, what we believe, and what we want to do with our lives. So what was Jesus up to during those missing years? Chapter 2. The Buddhist Connection Theory. This is where things start to get really interesting. There's a theory that during these lost years, Jesus may have traveled beyond Judea, far to the east, perhaps even to India, where he encountered Buddhist philosophy and teachings. Now I know what you're thinking. Jesus in India, that sounds like something out of a Dan Brown thriller. But here's the thing. This idea has been circulating for well over a century. It's not brand new. And while it's definitely not accepted by mainstream historians, it's captivated spiritual seekers and alternative researchers alike. The first big wave of this theory came in 1894, when a Russian journalist named Nicholas Notovich claimed he had discovered ancient Tibetan scrolls that told the story of a figure called Saint Isa, which he argued was another name for Jesus. According to Notovich, these scrolls described Isa's journey to India and his years of study with Buddhist and Hindu teachers. Now, not surprisingly, Notovich's claims were met with skepticism. Many scholars dismissed the story, questioning whether the scrolls even existed. But the idea stuck around, and thanks to books, documentaries, and especially the internet, it's reached a new whole audience in recent years. The BBC's documentary, Jesus in India, from 2008, gave the theory a modern reboot, helping it go viral online. Suddenly, people everywhere were talking about this wild possibility. What if Jesus had traveled east and been influenced by Buddhist wisdom? Chapter 3. The Legend of Saint Isa. Let's talk more about this figure of Saint Isa. In some Eastern traditions, Isa is believed to be another name for Jesus, but with a twist. In these stories, Jesus isn't just the Messiah. He's also a traveler, a seeker, someone on a spiritual quest far from home. The legend says that during his missing years, Isa traveled across India and Tibet, learning from Buddhist monks, debating with Hindu priests, and even challenging the rigid caste system of the time. Basically, instead of collecting souvenirs, he was collecting spiritual insights. One ancient Hindu text, the Bhavishya Purana, mentions a prophet called Isha Masiha, which sounds a lot like Jesus Messiah. This prophet supposedly came from the West and was respected by Indian sages. There are also references in Tibetan texts, manuscripts that describe Isa studying Buddhism, debating local scholars, and spreading teachings of compassion and nonviolence. And here's one more interesting connection: the Apostle Thomas. According to strong traditions among the Syrian Christian community in Kerala, India, Thomas, one of Jesus' own disciples, traveled to India around AD 52 and baptized new followers there. If that's true, it shows that early Christianity may have had direct contact with Indian spiritual traditions, which makes the idea of Jesus himself having been there not entirely out of the question.
Chapter 4. The Kashmir Connection. Now here's where the theory takes a really unexpected twist. Some would say the wildest part of the whole story. It's called the Kashmir Connection. Are you ready for this? According to this version of events, Jesus didn't actually die on the cross. Instead, he survived the crucifixion, escaped, and eventually settled in Kashmir, a stunning mountainous region between India and Pakistan. That's right. According to local tradition in Srinagar, Kashmir's largest city, there's a shrine called Rosabal, which some claim is the final resting place of a prophet named Uz Asaf. And here's the kicker. Some believe Uz Asaf was actually Jesus, living out his final years in peace after his tumultuous life in Judea. Now, the Rosabal Shrine isn't some grand cathedral. It's actually a modest building with an ancient tomb inside. But it's drawn plenty of attention from spiritual tourists and curiosity seekers from around the world, thanks to this theory. Supporters of the Kashmir Connection point to various pieces of supposed evidence, ancient local legends, old texts, and interestingly, carved footprints near the tomb that some say show markings of crucifixion wounds. Imagine that. Footprints said to belong to Jesus himself, showing scars from nails. Of course, this part of the story is the most controversial. Mainstream historians aren't buying it, and many religious authorities strongly reject the idea. But like many good mysteries, it's persisted, capturing the imagination of seekers and writers for generations. Chapter 5. From Scrolls to Screens. So how did this fringe theory gain so much traction, especially in modern times? The answer: books, documentaries, and of course, the internet. It all started with Nicholas Notovich's 1894 book, The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ. In it, Notovich described those supposed Tibetan scrolls he had discovered, which claimed Jesus, under the name Isa, had traveled and studied in India. The problem: no one has ever confirmed the existence of these scrolls since. Pretty convenient, right? Then in 1908, American author Levi H. Dowling expanded on the idea with the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ. This book painted a vivid picture of Jesus' supposed travels through India, Tibet, and Persia, basically a spiritual travelogue before Instagram was a thing. In 1981, Holger Kirsten released Jesus Lived in India, which became one of the definitive modern works on the theory. It pulled together legends, local traditions, and speculative historical connections into one narrative and brought fresh attention to the idea. Then in 1984, Elizabeth Clare Prophet published The Lost Years of Jesus, which explored multiple alternative theories about Jesus' life between the ages of 12 and 30. Again, highly speculative, but very popular with readers curious about hidden history. And it wasn't just books. The BBC's 2008 documentary, Jesus in India, introduced the theory to a new generation of viewers. The History Channel's The Lost Years of Jesus in 2007 and Discovery Channel's Jesus in Kashmir, The Lost Tomb, the same year, all helped bring the story into the mainstream. Suddenly, the idea of Jesus traveling to India wasn't just in obscure books, it was on screens around the world, sparking conversations at dinner tables and online forums alike. These media productions took what had once been a fringe idea and gave it mass appeal. They inspired curiosity, debate, and further research. They also reminded us of something powerful. Media, whether books or documentaries, can influence how we view history. They can challenge our assumptions and sometimes even spark new spiritual explorations. Chapter 6: Teachings Across Borders. Okay, let's dive into one of the most fascinating aspects of this whole theory, the similarities between the teachings of Jesus and the teachings of the Buddha. It's almost like setting up a philosophical conversation across time and space. Let's take a look. First, the Golden Rule. Jesus said, "Do to others what you would have them do to you." Buddha said, "Consider others as yourself." Different words, basically the same message. Treat people with kindness and empathy. Next, views on materialism. Jesus said, "It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God." Buddha taught that the root of suffering is attachment. In other words, don't get too hung up on wealth or material stuff. Focus on what truly matters. How about inner peace? Jesus taught, "The kingdom of God is within you." Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." Both point toward looking inward, not outward, for real fulfillment. Forgiveness? Jesus said, "Turn the other cheek." Buddha said, "Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love." Again, both challenge us to break the cycle of revenge and embrace compassion. And it doesn't stop there. The emphasis on compassion for others, service, mindfulness, humility, these values show up strongly in both traditions. For example, Jesus washing the feet of his disciples teaches humility and service to others. In Buddhism, the ideal of selfless compassion towards all beings is at the heart of the path. Both teachings value the life of the spirit over material success, compassion over judgment, inner peace over external distractions. Now, of course, many scholars argue these similarities could easily have arisen independently. These ideas were present in many cultures at the time. Philosophical ideas often flow across borders, especially through trade routes like the Silk Road. But supporters of the Jesus in India theory suggest another possibility, that Jesus may have encountered Buddhist teachings firsthand during his missing years and integrated some of those concepts into his message. Whether you believe that or not, it's a fascinating possibility to consider.
Chapter 7: The Skeptic's Corner. Now, before we get carried away with theories and possibilities, let's hit pause and look at this story through a more critical lens. It's time to put on the skeptic hat and ask the tough questions, because good history depends on evidence, not just intriguing ideas. First off, mainstream historians and biblical scholars are not exactly lining up to support the Jesus in India theory. In fact, most give it the side eye for one simple reason: lack of solid evidence. If Jesus really did travel to India, you'd expect to find some clear, contemporary records of it, right? After all, we're talking about a major figure taking an epic journey across multiple cultures. And yet, the Gospels, early Christian writings, and Roman sources are completely silent on the subject, not a single clear reference. Scholars argue that if something that monumental had happened, somebody in the first century would have written it down. Next comes the issue of logistics. The journey from Judea to India wasn't exactly a quick weekend trip. It would have been long, dangerous, and expensive, especially for a young man from a modest background. Sure, ancient trade routes like the Silk Road existed, but would Jesus have realistically undertaken such a massive journey on foot without wealth or powerful connections? Then there's the question of language. If Jesus had spent years in India, wouldn't he have picked up some Sanskrit or Pali? Yet in the Gospels, he speaks Aramaic and possibly some Hebrew or Greek, no signs of Indian linguistic influence. And about those philosophical similarities between Jesus' teachings and Buddhism. Many scholars point out that ideas like compassion, forgiveness, humility, and inner peace were circulating in many cultures of the ancient world. You don't necessarily need direct contact for similar ideas to emerge. Just like two people on opposite sides of the planet can stumble on the same viral TikTok trend today. In short, while the theory is fascinating, most historians say the evidence just isn't strong enough to move it from the realm of speculation into the realm of established fact. Chapter 8. Final Thoughts. Why this theory captivates us. So, after this long journey, what are we left with? We've explored ancient legends, looked at mysterious tombs, compared teachings, and dug into historical records. And in the end, here's the truth. There is no definitive proof that Jesus traveled to India. The evidence just isn't there, not in a way that would satisfy a serious historian. But does that mean the whole idea is useless? Not at all. Sometimes the value of a story isn't whether it's literally true, but what it inspires us to think about. This theory challenges us to look at familiar stories, like the life of Jesus, in new ways. It reminds us that history is full of gaps and mysteries, and that different cultures have been influencing each other for longer than we often realize. It also highlights something beautiful, the deep connections between spiritual traditions around the world. Whether Jesus and the Buddha ever crossed paths literally or not, their teachings share profound resonances about compassion, forgiveness, inner peace, and the value of a life guided by love rather than fear. And in today's world, where division often grabs headlines, that reminder feels more important than ever. Here's one more thought. You and I are living in an age where information, true and false, spreads like wildfire. That's why it's so important to cultivate both curiosity and critical thinking. Explore new ideas, absolutely, but always ask questions. Look for evidence. Don't just take any viral story or flashy documentary at face value. Maybe Jesus never went to India. Maybe he did. For now, the real answer is we don't know, and that's okay. Because in asking the question, in following the mystery, we grow. We open our minds to history's complexities. We embrace the spirit of inquiry. Wrapping up. So what do you think? Could there be something to the Jesus in India theory? Or is it just an interesting what-if scenario? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take. Maybe you've got your own theory about what Jesus was up to during those mysterious lost years. Share it. And if you enjoyed this journey into one of history's most intriguing mysteries, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps more curious minds like yours discover this video. And if you'd like to keep exploring the hidden corners of religious history and philosophy with us, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a deep dive like this one. Remember, history isn't just about dates and names. It's about exploring the big questions, challenging assumptions, and imagining new possibilities. So, stay curious, stay thoughtful, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one to uncover the next great historical mystery. This is Matt from Buddha's Wisdom, signing off. Until next time, keep your mind open and your curiosity fierce.